Welcome back to EWTN News In Depth. I'm Montse Alvarado. We continue our coverage on the controversial moves by church leaders in Germany to bless same-sex unions and its many implications. To give us a better understanding of how things are unfolding in Germany and what this could mean for the church in the U.S., we asked editor-in-chief of the Catholic news agency in Germany, AC Wimmer, to weigh in today, as well as EWTN News executive editor and D.C. bureau chief Dr. Matthew Bunson. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. AC, you're on the scene in Germany. From what you've heard, what is the average German Catholic's reaction to all of this?
Look, whilst it's hard to generalize, unfortunately, some surveys indicate an amount of indifference that is even baffling to people who don't go to church every Sunday. Over 60%, according to a more recent survey, in fact, do not care what the controversial synodal way is doing and saying. If you ask practicing Catholics, though, on an anecdotal level, I think you'll find that a few of them are very concerned, in particular the fear that there might be a schism or something like that happening here in Germany.
And the composition of the church is increasingly migrant, right? So does this synodal way reflect their interests and concerns?
The question of inclusivity is one that's burning, as people have acknowledged, in particular on the Central Committee of Lay Catholics, which plays a really crucial role on the synodal way. But are they adequately reflected? I doubt it, and I think a lot of observers do.
Dr. Bunson, let's talk about the global church. What do the organizers of this synodal path plan to do when they're done? Is this only about the church in Germany?
Well, that's exactly right. From the very beginning of this discussion, and now we're into this synodal way in Germany, one of the questions that has been asked is it simply going to stay in Germany? The phrase that was used, in fact, by Michael Warsaw in the recent publisher's note to the National Catholic Register is he describes it as a kind of theological virus. And so it is very likely that the results of these votes that they're going to be taking on church teaching as part of this synodal discussion in Germany they're going to be sent out across the world with the very clear aim of not just influencing national churches, but diocesan synods to sort of embrace this model of bringing in liberal democracy into the life of the church. But then I think we're also seeing their effort here to sort of tee up to influence the Synod of Bishops in October of 2022 that Pope Francis is convoking on a synod on synodality. So I think this has very wide ramifications.
And so how is this going to impact the Church of the United States specifically?
Well, when we began looking at the many details that were being discussed among the Germans for the synodal way, it was a kind of checklist of so many of the things that progressive Catholics have wanted for a number of decades. We think of the recent passing of the theologian Hanns Legacy, the Swiss theologian. These are things that he has been advocating or was advocating for a very long time. So what the synodal path is very likely to do, with the real encouragement of the Central Committee of Catholics and the German synodal process, is to encourage Catholics here in the United States who want progressive changes, who want to unravel church teaching in a host of different ways. We're talking about human sexuality, we're talking about authority in the church, the ordination of women, that they want this to be the blueprint for what can happen here in the United States. And this is something I think that many German bishops are leery of, and certainly the U.S. bishops should be very concerned about as well.
Hanss's legacy is one of great controversy going against many parts of church teaching. AC, is this something where you see the elite or the leadership of the church kind of casting out the desires and the beliefs of the people on the ground?
Certainly, Montse. I think those questions that were brought up by Father Kung, by others that are now being discussed in the synodal way are exactly the topics that will be purportedly also, as Dr. Bunson has said, distributed amongst the wider universal church. The elephant in the room here, of course, is the question of whether there is a schismatic tendency here or a real sort of disobedience of the Holy Father, which might be one qualification of it. And that's something we have yet to see. We have yet to see an actual response from Rome that goes beyond the rather serious, though I might add, interventions that both the Holy Father and several dicasteries have communicated rather clearly to Germany.
And Matthew, I'll ask you this about the U.S., and AC, I'll ask you about Germany. Is this something where the legalization of same-sex marriage throughout the world, we saw it in Canada first, then here in the U.S., where the secular governments are driving a change in church teaching?
Well, we're certainly seeing the influence of the world in the thinking of many of the theologians who are being used for the synodal path. We're seeing a similar approach. It is the embrace of liberal democracy, as I was saying. It is the secular idea of the same-sex marriage, and a host of other things, including, we have to point out, abortion, contraception, euthanasia, all finding their way into key discussions, not just in Germany, but also in many theologates or many theological programs here in the United States. Bishops, again, are concerned about this, and I know the Holy Father is as well. He has spoken out very clearly, trying to divert this path on the part of the Germans, but this is something that he's going to have to weigh in again in dealing with this.
AC, do you feel the same way?
Couldn't agree more, to be frank. I think the other point to add is there is a certain element of financial issues here. The church in Germany, as I'm sure most of you viewers will know, is rather rich when it comes to material goods, thanks to the church tax being levied on people who are Catholic. And the reason for that is historical and is now up for discussion, as is the income that's connected to that. And a lot of the bishops and the further administration around them is worried that they might be seeing a loss of those funds if they do not embrace all those secular agendas, including a kind of homosexual marriage and things like that.
That is a very, very good note to end on. We'll be watching that carefully, as well as an upcoming segment on Vatican finances in the coming weeks. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.